Okay, so are you ready to dive into a medieval mystery?
Always.
This one sounds like it's straight out of a fairy tale, but it's based on actual historical accounts.
Okay.
The Green Children of Woolpit.
I've heard of this.
Yeah, have you heard of this?
I have.
Okay, so picture this. It's 12th century England, the village of Woolpit. Great name already.
Yeah.
And these two kids just pop out of a wolf pit.
A wolf pit.
Yeah, and the pit's for trapping animals,
Hmm.
but, not for children.
Right.
And here's the thing, they're green,
Like green.
like head to toe green.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah, and what makes this even more wild is that we have actual historical chronicles that talk about this.
Really?
Yeah, so it wasn't just like a local legend or something.
Right.
These were written by historians like William of Newburgh
Okay.
and Ralph of Coggeshall.
I know these names, yeah.
Yeah, so, they weren't eyewitnesses to the event itself, but they were documenting things that were, a few decades old when they were writing.
So like a game of historical telephone.
Exactly, yeah, it's like who really knows how accurate it is?
Right.
But it's still pretty amazing that we have these sources.
Yeah, for sure.
So, but were they actually green?
So William of Newburgh, he really emphasizes this in his account.
Does he?
Yeah, he uses the phrase completely green in their persons.
Okay.
And he even mentions that their clothes were made of this unknown fabric.
So it wasn't just like a smudge of paint or something?
Right, exactly. It was like their whole deal.
And this wasn't a one-time observation, right?
No, they stayed green
Okay.
for a while at least.
Wow.
And there's this other really strange detail that both William and Ralph mention.
Okay.
These kids refused to eat anything that the villagers offered them.
What?
Yeah, no bread, no meat, nothing.
What kid turns down food?
I know, right? Picky eaters of the century.
Yeah.
But then someone brought out raw broad beans,
Okay.
and they devoured them.
Raw broad beans, that is so specific.
I know, it's so
Good
weird.
for 12th century standards. That's pretty out there.
Yeah, and that detail appears in a lot of the different accounts of the story.
Really?
Yeah, it's like this one very specific thing that people remembered.
Okay, so we've got green kids, a language barrier,
Right?
and a taste for raw broad beans. This is wild.
It's like Hansel and Gretel, but make it weirder.
1,000 times weirder.
Yeah, and speaking of fairy tales, there's a twist.
Oh, there's a twist.
Yeah, the girl eventually learns to speak English.
Okay, so the villagers could finally ask her, where did you come from?
Exactly. Imagine the anticipation.
No, they must have been on the edge of their seats.
Yeah, so when they finally ask her, she tells them about a place called St. Martin's Land.
St. Martin's Land.
Yeah.
Okay, tell me everything.
So her description of this place is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
She describes it as a place of perpetual twilight. No sun, everything bathed in this kind of greenish light.
A green-tinged twilight world. Right?
Ah, right?
It's like a medieval Stranger Things.
Right.
Okay, so do we think this St. Martin's Land could be a real place?
So some people think it might refer to a nearby village called Fornum St Martin,
Okay.
which was home to a community of Flemish immigrants.
Right, because during this time, England was seeing a lot of immigration from Flanders, right?
Exactly. A lot of them were escaping conflict or hardship back home.
And there was that whole Battle of Fornum that happened around that time, too.
Exactly, and it wasn't too far from Woolpit.
So it's possible these kids got caught up in all that.
Yeah, maybe they were separated from their families and just wandered until they ended up in Woolpit.
Lost, disoriented, maybe speaking Flemish, which would have sounded totally foreign to the villagers.
Right, exactly.
Okay, yeah, I'm starting to see how the pieces could fit together here.
Right?
But there's still that big green question mark hanging over everything.
The green skin.
Why were they green?
Yeah, that is the detail that has really captured people's imaginations for centuries.
It really is the weirdest historical detail.
Yeah, you couldn't make this stuff up.
So what are some of the theories that people have come up with to explain the green skin?
Well, there's always the more out there explanations.
Like what?
Like maybe they were visitors from another planet.
Okay, hold on. Alien time travelers in 12th century England. I mean, I'm here for it.
Right.
But we do like to try and keep things at least somewhat grounded here on the deep dive.
Of course, of course.
So what are some of the more, let's say, plausible explanations?
Right. So some have suggested arsenic poisoning.
Because, arsenic can cause that greenish discoloration of the skin.
Exactly.
And, I mean, it was the medieval poison of choice, right?
Yeah, it was pretty common back then.
But wouldn't there be other symptoms, too?
You would think so.
Wouldn't the chronicles mention that?
Right, and they don't really mention any of the other telltale signs of arsenic poisoning.
Okay, so we can't rule it out completely,
No,
but it's maybe not the most likely explanation.
probably not.
So what's the leading theory in the why so green debate?
Well, a lot of researchers think it could have been a condition called chlorosis.
Chlorosis.
Yeah, it's also known as green sickness.
Okay, I've heard of that.
It's a type of anemia that's caused by iron deficiency, often linked to a poor diet.
And these kids were living on raw broad beans for days.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
it's not like they were getting a balanced diet.
Yeah, talk about a limited menu.
Right.
So it makes sense that once they started eating other foods, the green coloring would fade.
Yeah, their bodies were finally getting the nutrients they needed.
But wasn't chlorosis usually thought to affect young women?
You're right, it was often associated with young women.
And the story says both the boy and girl were green.
That is an interesting point.
So it makes you wonder how accurate the descriptions really were.
Right. Was the greenness exaggerated over time?
Or maybe it was symbolic.
Ooh, I like that.
Because green has so many meanings, right?
Yeah.
Nature, fertility, magic, the otherworldly.
Exactly. It was often associated with the supernatural in medieval times.
So maybe the green skin wasn't meant to be taken literally.
Right.
Maybe it was a way to show how different these children were.
Outsiders in every sense of the word.
Okay, so let's say for a minute that the green skin was more metaphorical than medical.
Okay.
That still leaves us with two kids, possibly refugees, maybe orphaned wandering out of the woods, into a village where they can't even ask for directions,
It really makes you think about how difficult life could be back then,
especially for children.
especially for children who were alone.
And it makes you wonder how many other stories like this were lost to history,
Right. Stories that might not have been as fantastical.
but probably just as compelling.
Absolutely.
And that's what I love about a good historical mystery.
What's that?
It's not always about finding the answers.
Sometimes it's more about exploring the possibilities.
Exactly, and connecting with the past in a way that makes it feel real.
And I think that's what draws people to the story of the Green Children of Woolpit.
It's a story that's been told and retold for centuries.
And every generation seems to find new meaning in it.
But the question remains, what does it all mean? It's like we have all these pieces of the puzzle, but we don't even know what the picture's supposed to be.
Right, exactly. It's like trying to solve a mystery without all the clues.
So, centuries later, what are some of the interpretations that people have come up with for this story?
Well, I think one of the most interesting things about this story is how many different ways it can be read.
Yeah.
Some historians see the Green Children as representing this fear of the unknown.
Which would have been a big deal in 12th century England.
Oh, absolutely.
What, with all the political instability and the waves of immigration?
Exactly. It was a time of great change and upheaval.
So these kids kind of become a symbol for all those anxieties of the time.
Exactly. They represent the other.
The people that they feared.
Right, and then you have the girl's integration into Woolpit society.
She even marries a local man.
Yeah, it could be seen as this kind of hopeful assimilation narrative.
But it sounds like it gets a bit more complicated than that.
It does, because some accounts describe her as being wanton and impudent after she grew up.
Wow, those are some harsh words.
Right, and it makes you wonder if those were just attempts to discredit a woman who didn't really conform to what society expected of her.
It's a good reminder that even a story that seems pretty straightforward can have all these layers of power dynamics and social commentary.
Absolutely. We're hearing this story through the lens of history.
Right.
And we have to remember that we're getting a very specific perspective.
The perspective of these chronicles written by William and Ralph.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder if they were trying to say something more with this story.
Like maybe it wasn't just about chronicling this unusual event, but using it as a way to explore bigger ideas.
Right, exactly. Like faith or society or even the nature of reality itself.
It's a story that you can really analyze on so many different levels.
Absolutely.
It's like those optical illusions where you can see two different images depending on how you look at it.
Exactly. The Green Children of Woolpit offer us a similar kind of perceptual shift.
It's not enough to just take the story at face value.
Right. We have to consider all these different viewpoints, different interpretations, and embrace that ambiguity.
Because history isn't a neatly organized textbook.
No, it's messy. It's complicated, and there are always more perspectives to uncover.
So where does that leave us?
I don't know.
We've explored the historical context,
Yeah.
the possible explanations, the symbolism,
Right.
but the biggest question is still unanswered.
And that is,
Were the Green Children real?
do you think they were real?
I mean, I don't know.
It's the beauty of it, isn't it?
What's that?
We may never know for sure.
Yeah,
And maybe that's okay.
I think so.
What really matters is that the story continues to resonate with people.
It sparks our curiosity
It invites us to engage with the past.
in a way that's meaningful.
And I think that's a really powerful thing.
It really is, and it makes you wonder what other historical mysteries are still out there waiting to be rediscovered
Oh, I'm sure there are plenty.
and debated.
Absolutely. And that's what makes studying history so fascinating.
It's a never-ending journey of discovery. Well, on that note, I think we've done our deep dive on the Green Children of Woolpit for today.
That was a good one.
Yeah, if you want to delve even deeper into this mystery, we've got links to some really fascinating research and different theories in the show notes.
Be sure to check them out.
And until next time, happy exploring.